She evicted a pregnant tenant, unaware her husband owns the building she lives in. She stood on the steps, watching a pregnant woman's suitcase crash down like thunder. Not just any tenant, 7 months pregnant, clutching her belly in fear. A woman who begged for mercy, but was met with cold laughter. The landlady thought she was untouchable. Gold bangles on her wrist, power in her voice, cruelty in her heart. But what she didn't know was that every brick, every nail, every apartment she ruled with iron fists belonged to someone else. Her husband, the man she thought she was impressing with her ruthless management. The man whose empire she was quietly poisoning with every eviction. Now her reign of terror is about to collapse. Because when a mother's cries make the headlines, even the walls of a mansion can't hide the truth. And tonight, one husband will decide, protect his empire or expose his wife. Either way, someone's world is about to burn. It all started as the scorching Lagos sun beats down mercilessly as Mrs. Adana Okoro's gold bangles catch the light, each piece worth more than most people's monthly salary. Her designer-laced wrapper rustles as she towers over the crumbling concrete steps, watching with cold satisfaction as 7 months pregnant Sarah Ease clutches desperately at the iron railings. The sound of Sarah's suitcase tumbling down the stairs echoes through the compound like a gunshot. "Please, Ma, I beg you in the name of God." Sarah's voice cracks as she cradles her swollen belly, but Adana's painted lips curl into a sneer. The neighbors' curtains twitch. Everyone watching, no one brave enough to intervene. What happens next will haunt this community forever. Adana's manicured fingers drum against her expensive handbag as she delivers her verdict with the coldness of a judge sentencing a criminal to death. "Your sob story means nothing to me, you hear? Nothing." Her voice carries across the courtyard, making babies cry and old women cross themselves. Sarah's tears mix with sweat as another contraction grips her, stress-induced, dangerous, threatening the life growing inside her. The afternoon heat shimmers off the pavement like waves of cruelty made visible. Even the street dogs seem to sense the evil unfolding, slinking away to darker corners. But Adana isn't finished destroying lives today. Sarah's husband's last phone call plays in her memory, his voice crackling through poor connection from Port Harcourt. The oil company payment is delayed, but it's coming. Tell the landlady just 2 more weeks. 2 weeks might as well be 2 years when dealing with a woman whose heart pumped liquid ice instead of blood. Adana checks her gold-plated watch with theatrical impatience, as if Sarah's desperation is personally inconveniencing her lunch plans. The pregnant woman's legs tremble. Not from pregnancy, but from the devastating realization that her baby might be born on the streets. Why would a woman with so much wealth show zero mercy to someone with so little? The compound erupts into whispered prayers as Sarah struggles to lift her heavy suitcase, her back aching under the weight of both her belongings and her unborn child. "Chinique, please help this woman," murmurs Mama Kemi from her doorway, but she doesn't dare step forward. Adana's reputation for revenge runs deep. Cross her, and you might find yourself homeless next. The sound of zippers closing and locks clicking shut fills the air as neighbors retreat behind their doors, leaving Sarah alone to face the monster in designer clothes. But what none of them know, including Adana herself, is that cosmic justice has a twisted sense of humor. As Sarah takes her first steps toward the gate, carrying nothing but a battered suitcase and broken dreams, the afternoon shadows seem to grow longer and darker. Adana stands triumphant on her steps, surveying her kingdom of fear with the satisfaction of a queen who has just executed a traitor. The metal gate clangs shut behind Sarah with such finality that it sounds like a coffin lid closing. Other tenants peek through their windows, calculating silently whether they'll be next on Adana's hit list. The cruelty hanging in the air is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Children playing in the distance fall silent as Sarah walks past, their young hearts somehow understanding that they're witnessing something profoundly wrong. Adana's gold jewelry catches the light one final time as she turns to enter her own apartment, the most luxurious unit in the building, naturally. She has no idea that the documents in her purse, the ones that make her feel so powerful and untouchable, are about to become the instruments of her own destruction. The wheels of karma are already turning, and they're about to crush everything she thinks she knows about her perfect life. The compound settles into an uneasy quiet, but the tension lingers like smoke after a fire. Sarah's empty apartment window stares down at the courtyard like a dead eye, while Adana's curtains flutter in the breeze, hiding secrets that would shake this woman to her very core. Every step Sarah takes away from this place carries her closer to a revelation that will expose just how twisted fate can be. The universe has a way of balancing the scales, and today's act of cruelty has set in motion a chain of events that will leave everyone gasping in shock. 25 miles away in Victoria Island's gleaming financial district, Chief Emeka Okoro's reflection stares back at him from floor-to-ceiling windows that cost more than most people's homes. His corner office on the 30th floor overlooks Lagos Harbor, where cargo ships carry goods worth billions. Much like the fortune he's built from absolutely nothing. The morning sun streams through bulletproof glass, illuminating documents spread across his mahogany desk like a treasure map of real estate conquest. His secretary, Mrs. Folklore, enters with her usual morning report, her heels clicking against imported Italian marble. But the number she's about to reveal would make his wife's head spin if she only knew the truth. Sir, the Acacia properties generated 2.3 million naira this month, Mrs. Folklore announces, her voice professional but tinged with the respect reserved for men who command empires. Emeka nods, barely looking up from financial reports that read like the GDP of small countries. Behind him, a wall-mounted map of Lagos is dotted with red pins, each one marking a property in his vast portfolio. 47 buildings across 3 states, from luxury high-rises to modest apartment complexes. His finger traces the route between Victoria Island and Acacia, the same path his driver takes him home each evening to the woman who believes she rules a kingdom, unaware she's merely a tenant in his empire. The leather-bound folder in Emeka's hands contains documents that would shock anyone who knows his wife's reputation for ruthless evictions. Property deeds, all bearing his name, all legally transferred to him 5 years ago during their honeymoon period. He'd put everything in Adana's name as a romantic gesture, wanting to give her security and independence. But the legal reality tells a different story. Every building she thinks she owns, every rent payment she collects, every eviction notice she serves, happens on property that belongs entirely to him. The irony sits in his chest like a stone, growing heavier each time he hears whispers about her heartless treatment of tenants. Emeka's phone buzzes with a message from his property manager. The Acacia complex is performing well, but there are concerns about tenant satisfaction. Some complaints about the on-site management. The words hit him like a punch to the gut because he knows exactly who manages that property. He's heard the stories through his network, whispered conversations about a landlady so cruel that people would rather sleep on the streets than face her wrath. The realization that his own wife has become the neighborhood villain makes his expensive breakfast taste like ash. How did the woman he married transform into someone capable of such cruelty? His assistant's voice interrupts his dark thoughts. Sir, your 10 a.m. appointment with the housing ministry is confirmed. They want to discuss your proposal for affordable housing initiatives. The bitter irony isn't lost on him. While he's planning to build homes for the poor, his wife is busy throwing pregnant women onto the streets. Emeka stares at a photograph on his desk. Their wedding day, both of them smiling, full of hope and love. The woman in that picture seemed incapable of the cruelty he's been hearing about. Money changes people, but he never imagined it could transform someone so completely. The weight of his double life presses down on his shoulders like a lead blanket. His business associates know him as a philanthropist who builds schools and clinics, yet his wife has become the monster that mothers used to frighten disobedient children. The buildings in his portfolio generate enough income to house half of Lagos comfortably, but instead of using that power for good, Adana wields it like a weapon against the vulnerable. Emeka picks up his Mont Blanc pen, the same one he used to sign their marriage certificate, and wonders how he allowed his love to create a monster. The morning light shifts across his office as clouds gather outside, mirroring the storm brewing in his conscience. Every property report, every financial statement, Every success story in his empire is tainted by the knowledge that somewhere across the city, his wife is probably destroying another family's life. The man who started with nothing and built everything has created his own personal hell, a prison made of gold and guilt, where success tastes bitter and love has curdled into something unrecognizable. But he has no idea that today's cruelty will finally force him to confront the monster he's been unknowingly funding all this time. As Lagos transforms from the chaos of day into the dangerous uncertainty of night, Sarah sits on a cracked plastic chair at the Ojuelegba bus stop, her small suitcase a pathetic barrier between her and the concrete world that has suddenly become her reality. The baby inside her womb kicks frantically, as if sensing the fear radiating from his mother's racing heart. Street lights flicker overhead like dying stars, casting eerie shadows across her swollen face as evening commuters hurry past, too busy escaping their own struggles to notice a pregnant woman slowly disappearing into the city's forgotten corners. Her phone shows 17 missed calls from relatives, but shame burns her throat raw. How do you explain that you've become homeless in a city where appearances mean everything? The smell of roasted plantain and car exhaust creates a nauseating cocktail that makes Sarah's pregnancy-sensitive stomach churn violently. She clutches the phone number of her cousin in Mushin, finger hovering over the call button, but pride keeps her frozen. "What will I tell them?" she whispers to her unborn son, feeling him respond with a strong kick that nearly brings tears to her eyes. A taxi driver named Brother Cunnell notices her sitting there as he fills his tank at the nearby station, his kind eyes taking in her obvious pregnancy and desperate situation. "Sister, you need somewhere to sleep tonight," he asks gently, but Sarah's dignity won't let her accept charity from a stranger. She shakes her head, not trusting her voice. As midnight approaches, Lagos reveals its true face. The city that never sleeps becomes a hunting ground for those who prey on the vulnerable. Sarah finds temporary refuge under the corrugated iron awning of a 24-hour pharmacy, where the harsh fluorescent lights buzz and flicker like angry insects. She spreads cardboard boxes on the concrete, creating a makeshift bed that would make even prisoners weep. The night security guard, an elderly Hausa man named Malam Sul, pretends not to see her, but deliberately positions himself where he can keep watch. Every shadow that moves, every footstep that echoes in the distance, sends Sarah's heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird desperate for freedom. The baby's movements become more erratic as the hours crawl by, responding to his mother's stress hormones flooding through the umbilical cord like liquid anxiety. Sarah whispers lullabies in Igbo, the same songs her grandmother sang to her during childhood visits to the village, but her voice cracks with unshed tears. NWAM, Mama Jesh Gi Nkioma, my child, Mama will take good care of you, she promises, though the words feel like lies in her mouth. Around 3 a.m., Braxton Hicks' contractions grip her abdomen like invisible hands trying to squeeze the life from her body, each one a terrifying reminder that this baby could arrive at any moment. She's only 7 months along. Too early, too dangerous, too cruel. A police patrol car creeps past the pharmacy, its headlights sweeping across Sarah's huddled form like searchlights hunting for criminals. She tries to make herself smaller, invisible, knowing that even the forces meant to protect her might view her as a problem to be moved along rather than a human being in crisis. The officers slow down, their radio crackling with static and urgent calls from across the city. But tonight luck favors the desperate. They receive an emergency call that sends them speeding into the distance. Sarah exhales slowly, realizing she's been holding her breath for what feels like forever. The baby settles slightly, as if he too understands they've dodged another bullet. Dawn approaches with cruel slowness, painting the Lagos sky in shades of pink and orange that mock Sarah's dark circumstances with their beauty. Her back aches from the concrete, her ankles are swollen to twice their normal size, and the baby's kicks have become weaker, a sign that terrifies her more than anything else. Street vendors begin setting up their stalls, their cheerful morning greetings to each other a painful reminder of the normal life she's lost. Malam Sul approaches quietly, pressing a warm cup of tea and a meat pie into her hands, without saying a word. His kindness threatens to break the dam holding back her tears, but Sarah knows that once she starts crying, she might never stop. As the city awakens around her, Sarah realizes with growing dread that she has nowhere to go, no plan beyond surviving each hour as it comes. The contractions are getting stronger and more frequent. Her body is preparing for labor whether she's ready or not. The baby who should be born in a clean hospital room surrounded by love might instead arrive on these unforgiving streets, delivered by strangers who see her as a cautionary tale rather than a human being deserving of dignity. But what Sarah doesn't know is that her story is about to intersect with forces beyond her imagination, setting in motion events that will expose the rotten heart of the system that put her here. The morning sun hasn't even dried the dew from the compound's cracked pavement when Adana's war against humanity begins anew, her gold jewelry jangling like chains on a slave ship as she marches toward her next victims. The Balogun family's apartment door stands slightly ajar, revealing glimpses of a life being frantically dismantled. Children's clothes folded into rice bags, family photos wrapped in old newspapers, dreams packed away like seasonal decorations. Mr. Balogun lost his job at the brewery 3 weeks ago, but in Adana's arithmetic of cruelty, unemployed equals expendable. She stands with arms crossed, her expensive perfume a sickening contrast to the smell of poverty and desperation that clings to the family like a second skin. "Business is business," she declares, but her eyes gleam with something far more sinister than profit. 2 doors down, 78-year-old Mama Adani kneels on the concrete steps, her arthritic hands clasped in desperate prayer as she begs for just 1 week's mercy. The old woman's pension was delayed by bureaucratic red tape, but her landlady's heart pumps ice water instead of blood. "Your age is not my problem," Adana sneers, her voice cutting through the morning air like a machete through sugarcane. The elderly widow's grandchildren peek through the window, their innocent eyes witnessing cruelty that will scar their understanding of human nature forever. Neighbors gather in doorways, watching in horrified silence as their community's moral fabric unravels thread by thread. This woman has turned landlording into a blood sport, and everyone knows they could be next. The local pastor, Reverend Adebayo, attempted reasoning with her just last week, armed with Bible verses about loving your neighbor and caring for the less fortunate. But Adana's greed has consumed any trace of Ubuntu, the African philosophy that declares, "I am because we are." She laughed in his face, her gold teeth glinting like fangs as she reminded him that his own church rents from her, and perhaps he should focus on his sermons instead of her business practices. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre, and even God's messenger retreated in defeat. The neighborhood children now whisper that she sold her soul to the devil, though the truth might be worse. She never had one to begin with. By noon, the compound resembles a war zone where families fight losing battles against an enemy armed with legal documents and unlimited cruelty. The Okafor twins, barely 16 and orphaned last year, stand beside their packed belongings like refugees in their own homeland. Their guardian uncle hasn't sent money from America as promised, and Adana's patience has the lifespan of a mayfly. She taps her foot impatiently as the teenagers fumble with their deceased parents' photographs, their most precious possessions now reduced to items that must fit in plastic bags. The sight should melt any human heart, but Adana's chest cavity contains only a cash register where compassion should reside. The afternoon heat intensifies, but it's nothing compared to the fire of greed burning behind Adana's cold eyes as she calculates rental increases for the incoming tenants. Each eviction notice served is another victory in her private war against human decency. Each family destroyed another step up her ladder of wealth. She keeps a ledger, not of financial records, but of lives ruined, dreams shattered, children made homeless. The numbers excite her more than any sexual pleasure, feeding a hunger that grows stronger with each act of cruelty. Her own apartment, the largest in the building, sits like a palace of evil overlooking the courtyard where families disintegrate daily. The compound's remaining tenants move through the evening like ghosts haunting their own lives, knowing that tomorrow might bring their turn under Adana's executioner's axe. Children play quietly, afraid that too much joy might attract the attention of the woman who feeds on human misery. Parents whisper behind closed doors, making backup plans that feel like preparing for natural disasters. Except this storm wears gold jewelry and designer clothes. The community that once thrived on mutual support has been poisoned by one woman's toxic presence, turning neighbors into isolated islands of fear. As darkness falls over the compound, Adana surveys her kingdom of terror from her balcony, satisfied with another day's harvest of human suffering. She has no idea that the universe keeps its own ledger, and her account is about to come due with interest that will destroy everything she thinks she owns. The documents in her purse feel heavy with power, but they're actually light as feathers compared to the weight of cosmic justice that's about to crush her world into dust. Tomorrow will bring revelations that will make her current victims look fortunate by comparison, but tonight she sleeps peacefully, dreaming of more families to destroy. The evening settles over the neighborhood like a heavy blanket as residents gather at Baba Rashid's beer parlor, the flicker of fluorescent lights casting dancing shadows across worried faces, nursing bottles of Star Lager, and sharing whispered secrets. Mama Chitty, the compound's unofficial intelligence network, leans forward conspiratorially, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "You people, I'm telling you something that will shock your brain. My cousin works at the land registry office in Acadia." The men playing drafts pause their game, wooden pieces frozen mid-move as every ear in the dimly lit space strains to catch her words. Something in her tone promises revelations that could change everything they thought they knew about their tormentor. "She told me that all these buildings, every single one where that witch Adana collects rent, they all have the same mysterious owner on paper." Mama Chitty continues, her gold tooth catching the light as she speaks. The revelation hits the gathered crowd like lightning striking dry grass, igniting conversations that buzz through the air like electricity. Papa Emeka, the local carpenter, nearly chokes on his beer. "You mean all this time, she's been acting like she owns everything, but she's just, what? A manager?" The implications hang in the humid night air like smoke from a burn offering, each person calculating how this knowledge might shift the balance of power that has kept them living in fear. Baba Sool, the ancient security guard who has watched this neighborhood transform from farmland to urban jungle over 20 years, sets down his cola nut with the gravity of an elder about to reveal ancestral secrets. "I remember when all these buildings were constructed," he says, his voice carrying the weight of decades. "Same company built them all. Crews would come in matching uniforms, same foreman shouting orders, same quality materials." His weathered hands gesture toward the window, encompassing the entire street. "But the interesting thing is, the real owner never showed his face around here. Never. My friend who worked security for the construction company said the man had serious connections in Abuja, but nobody ever saw him inspect the work." The pieces of this puzzle scattered among the community begin forming a picture that makes everyone's pulse quicken with possibilities they dare not voice. "I heard from my brother-in-law who works for the bank that this mysterious owner is married to someone in this very neighborhood," whispers Mama Kemi, her voice trembling with the weight of implications. The silence that follows is deafening. 20 people suddenly understanding that the answer to their prayers might be walking among them disguised as their greatest nightmare. The cosmic irony is so perfect it feels like a Nollywood plot twist, but real life often exceeds fiction in its capacity for jaw-dropping revelations. Brother Tajuddin, the local mechanic whose hands are permanently stained with engine oil, pieces together fragments of overhead conversations from years of fixing cars for the area's elite residents. "I fixed a big man's Mercedes once. Chief something something from Victoria Island. His driver was talking about properties in this area, saying his boss owns half of Lagos, but his wife doesn't know the real extent of his wealth." The gathered crowd exchanges meaningful glances, each person's imagination running wild with possibilities. Could their salvation be hiding in plain sight, married to the very demon who's been destroying their lives? The implications ripple through the crowd like stones thrown into still water, each person suddenly viewing their circumstances through a completely different lens. If the mysterious owner is indeed married to Adana, Then every eviction notice, every heartless demand, every family thrown onto the streets represents the ultimate betrayal. A wife using her husband's property empire to terrorize the very communities he built it to serve. The irony is so bitter it could kill, yet so perfect it feels like divine intervention waiting to unfold. Conversations continue deep into the night, voices mixing with the sound of generators and distant music, but everyone's thoughts circle around the same explosive possibility. As the beer parlor gradually empties and residents return to their homes, the seeds of revelation have been planted in fertile ground watered by years of suffering and injustice. The neighborhood grapevine, more efficient than any modern communication system, will ensure that by morning every household will know about the mysterious property owner whose identity remains tantalizingly out of reach. But cosmic justice has its own timeline, and the truth that's about to explode will make today's gossip seem like whispered prayers compared to tomorrow's thunderclap of revelation. The universe is preparing to serve Adana a dish of karma so perfectly seasoned with irony that even her gold-plated teeth won't be able to chew it. The third night of Sarah's homelessness arrives with the fury of an angry god as dark clouds gather over Lagos like an army preparing for war. The afternoon sky transforms from blue to black in minutes, promising the kind of storm that floods streets and changes lives forever. Sarah has found temporary shelter in the doorway of St. Monica's Catholic Church, her swollen body pressed against wooden doors that remain locked until morning mass. The first drops of rain begin falling like tears from heaven, each one exploding against the concrete with the sound of breaking hearts. But nature's violence is nothing compared to the agony that's about to tear through Sarah's body like lightning splitting the sky. At exactly 11:47 p.m., as thunder crashes overhead with the power of 1,000 drums, Sarah feels something give way deep inside her pelvis, a sensation like a dam bursting under pressure. The warm fluid that gushes between her legs mixes with rainwater, creating a puddle that reflects the occasional flash of lightning. No, not yet, she gasps, her voice lost in the howling wind. But her son has decided he's waited long enough in his mother's womb. The contractions that follow aren't the practice ones she's felt before. These are the real thing, waves of pain that crash over her like ocean storms, each one stronger and closer than the last. The baby is coming whether the world is ready or not. Sister Mary Catherine, making her late-night rounds to check the church grounds, discovers Sarah writhing in the doorway like a wounded animal. The elderly nun's heart nearly stops at the sight. A pregnant woman in active labor, alone in a thunderstorm, the kind of emergency that would test even the most prepared hospital. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, she breathes, then immediately springs into action with the efficiency of someone who has seen every form of human suffering imaginable. Within minutes, she has Sarah on the back of Brother Paul's motorcycle taxi, racing through flooded streets toward the nearest clinic while rain lashes their faces like whips wielded by invisible demons. The motorcycle skids and slides through Lagos streets transformed into rivers, its headlight cutting through darkness thick enough to choke on. Sarah grips Sister Mary's habit with fingernails that dig deep enough to draw blood, her screams mixing with the engine's roar and the storm's fury. Each pothole sends shockwaves through her contracting uterus, making the baby's early arrival seem less like birth and more like an explosion waiting to happen. "Hold on, my daughter," Sister Mary shouts over the wind, her own prayers mixing with Sarah's moans of agony. The clinic's emergency lights appear through the storm like salvation itself, but they're still racing against time and circumstance that threaten both mother and child. Inside the clinic, fluorescent lights buzz and flicker as if the storm outside is trying to invade even this sterile sanctuary. The midwife, Mrs. Aginola, takes one look at Sarah's condition and immediately understands they're dealing with stress-induced premature labor, the kind that kills babies and destroys mothers. "How long has she been homeless?" she asks Sister Mary, her experienced hands already assessing cervical dilation while Sarah grips the examining table like a life raft. The answer comes in the form of Sarah's agonized scream as another contraction rips through her body, followed by the sight of a tiny foot appearing where it shouldn't be. This baby is coming breech, early and dangerously fast. For 8 hours that feel like 8 lifetimes, Sarah battles against pain that makes her previous suffering seem like gentle caresses. Her screams echo through the clinic's thin walls, attracting concerned glances from other patients who whisper prayers for the unknown woman fighting for 2 lives at once. The storm outside gradually weakens, but the tempest inside Sarah's body rages on with biblical intensity. Sister Mary holds her hand, whispering Hail Marys while the midwife works with the desperate efficiency of someone trying to catch lightning in her bare hands. At 7:23 a.m., as the first rays of sunlight pierce the dissipating storm clouds, Sarah's son enters the world 2 months early, weighing barely 3 pounds, his cry weak but determined. A fighter like his mother. The baby's first breath in the outside world carries with it the echoes of injustice, homelessness, and a mother's love that refused to surrender even when the universe seemed determined to crush it. Sarah cradles her premature son against her chest, counting tiny fingers that grip hers with surprising strength despite his early arrival. The irony cuts deep. This child, born because of one woman's cruelty, will grow up to witness justice served in ways that would make Hollywood scriptwriters weep with envy. But for now, in this moment of exhausted triumph, Sarah simply whispers promises to her son that she'll find them a home, unaware that the cosmic wheels of justice are already turning, preparing to deliver retribution so perfect it will leave everyone who hears the story questioning whether they believe in miracles. The morning after Sarah's son fights his way into the world, Emeka sits in his Victoria Island office staring at a newspaper headline that makes his blood freeze. Pregnant woman gives birth on streets after heartless eviction. The accompanying photograph shows Sarah cradling her premature baby in the clinic, her face gaunt with exhaustion but her eyes blazing with a mother's fierce protection. But it's the smaller text beneath that makes Emeka's hands tremble. The address mentioned is his property, managed by his wife. The realization hits him like a physical blow. His own money, his own buildings, his own wife have been the instruments of this woman's torture. The phone in his hands suddenly weighs 1,000 pounds. Mrs. Folake enters with her morning report, but stops mid-sentence when she sees her boss's ashen face. "Sir, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." Emeka's laugh comes out bitter and broken. "Not a ghost, a monster. And I've been feeding it for 5 years." He shows her the newspaper, watching her expression change from confusion to horror as she realizes the implications. This isn't just another tragic news story. This is personal, immediate, and devastating. The empire he built to create housing for families has become a weapon in his wife's war against humanity. Every property deed in his files now feels contaminated with blood. Across town, Adana starts her morning routine completely unaware that her world is about to collapse like a house of cards in a hurricane. She adjusts her gold jewelry, checks her reflection in the mirror, and plans another day of terror against her tenants. But today the universe has a different script prepared. As she steps onto her balcony to survey her kingdom, she notices unusual activity in the compound, people gathering in small groups, whispering with an energy that feels different from the usual fear. Her instinct for danger, honed by years of creating it, starts sending warning signals through her nervous system. The first crack in her armor appears when Mama Chitty approaches with confidence that Adana has never seen before. "Good morning, our landlady," she says, but there's something in her tone, a subtle mockery that makes Adana's skin crawl. "I heard there was some interesting news about property ownership in this area. Maybe you should check today's newspaper." The woman's smile contains secrets that make Adana's stomach lurch, but before she can respond, Mama Chitty walks away, leaving behind an atmosphere thick with unspoken threats. The balance of power is shifting, and everyone can feel it. Within hours, the neighborhood grapevine explodes with information that spreads faster than wildfire through dry grass. Brother Cunnell, the taxi driver who tried to help Sarah, has been making calls to journalists, property lawyers, and anyone who will listen to the story of cosmic justice about to unfold. The pieces of the puzzle come together with devastating clarity. The mysterious property owner, the cruel wife, the pregnant woman thrown onto the streets of her own husband's building. The irony is so perfect it feels orchestrated by divine intervention, but the consequences will be brutally real. That evening, driven by a need to see the truth with his own eyes, Emeka sits in his Mercedes across from the Acacia property, engine idling like his racing thoughts as he prepares to witness firsthand what his wife has become. The compound that should be a place of safety and community looks like a war zone, with evicted families' belongings scattered on the pavement like casualties of domestic warfare. Then she appears. His beautiful wife transformed into something unrecognizable, her voice carrying across the courtyard with the venom of a snake as she screams at an elderly tenant about late rent. "You old fool. You think I care about your dead husband's pension? Pay or get out." The cruelty in her tone makes his stomach turn, and he realizes he's watching a stranger wearing his wife's face. The man who built his empire on the principle of providing affordable housing for families watches in horror as the woman he loves most in the world destroys everything he stands for. Each harsh word from her mouth feels like a nail being driven into the coffin of their marriage. Each threat, she makes a betrayal of every value he thought they shared. Emeka grips the steering wheel until his knuckles turn white, watching his wife terrorize people who should be under his protection. The bitter irony cuts deep. While he spends his days in board meetings discussing corporate social responsibility and affordable housing initiatives, his own wife has turned his properties into instruments of torture. The elderly tenant Adana is terrorizing Emeka painfully of his own grandmother, who raised him in a similar compound after his parents died. He remembers the kindness of neighbors who shared food when there wasn't enough, the community spirit that helped struggling families survive hardship, the unspoken understanding that everyone deserved dignity regardless of their financial situation. But his wife has poisoned all of that, turning his buildings into places of fear where families live in terror of the next rent day. The realization that he's indirectly responsible for this suffering makes him feel like an accomplice to crimes against humanity. Finally, Emeka's Mercedes pulls into the compound, its gleaming surface reflecting the shocked faces of tenants who never imagined their landlady's husband would look like this. The man stepping from the back seat isn't what they expected. No monster, no demon, just a well-dressed businessman whose eyes carry the weight of devastating knowledge. Adana appears on her balcony, her gold jewelry catching the setting sun one last time before her world ends forever. The moment their eyes meet across the courtyard, both husband and wife understand that everything they thought they knew about their lives was an illusion about to shatter into a million pieces. The confrontation that follows will become a neighborhood legend, passed down through generations like an ancient folktale about justice served cold and karma delivered with mathematical precision. But tonight, as Emeka walks slowly toward the building where his wife has been playing God with other people's lives, using his money and his properties as instruments of torture, the only sound is the clicking of his expensive shoes on concrete, each step echoing like a judge's gavel about to deliver the verdict that will change everything. The universe has prepared a reckoning so perfectly crafted that even Hollywood couldn't improve the script. As darkness falls and Adana retreats to their luxurious apartment, the apartment he bought and furnished with love now feels like a palace built on the tears of the innocent. Emeka makes a decision that will change everything. The documents in his briefcase contain the power to end her reign of terror immediately, but the emotional cost will be devastating. He's about to destroy his marriage to save his soul, trading personal happiness for cosmic justice. The woman he once loved has become a stranger capable of cruelties that make his skin crawl, and tomorrow he'll have to look her in the eye and deliver news that will shatter both their worlds forever. The drive home through Lagos traffic gives him time to plan his confrontation. Each traffic light a countdown to the moment when he'll have to choose between protecting his wife and protecting the innocent families she's been terrorizing. His phone buzzes with text messages from Adana, casual updates about her day, completely oblivious to the fact that her husband has just witnessed her transformation into the neighborhood's most feared predator. The cognitive dissonance makes him feel like he's living in two different realities, married to two completely different women, and tomorrow he'll have to decide which version of his wife deserves his loyalty. The reverberations will echo through this community forever, a reminder that justice may be delayed but never denied, and that sometimes the universe's sense of humor is darker and more twisted than any human imagination could conjure. Sarah's premature son will grow up hearing this tale, never knowing that his early arrival was the catalyst that exposed one of the most perfect examples of karma ever witnessed. And Adana? She'll discover that all the gold in the world can't protect you when you've built your empire on the foundation of other people's suffering. The confrontation unfolds in their Koi mansion's dining room, where Italian marble floors and crystal chandeliers create an atmosphere of luxury that feels obscene given what Emeka now knows about how his wealth has been weaponized. Adana sits across from him at their mahogany table, imported from Ghana at enormous cost, completely unaware that this dinner will be their last as husband and wife in any meaningful sense. "Darling, we need to discuss the properties," Emeka begins, his voice carefully controlled but carrying undertones that make the air between them crackle with unspoken danger. She immediately bristles with defensive pride. "My properties are performing excellently. Thank you very much. I've increased revenue by 30% this quarter through more efficient management." The word efficient in her mouth sounds like blasphemy. Emeka's jaw tightens as he processes his wife's casual reference to her properties, buildings he sweated blood to acquire, mortgages he sacrificed years of his life to pay off, dreams he built brick by brick now claimed by someone who contributes nothing but cruelty to their management. "Your properties?" The question emerges with the quiet fury of distant thunder, and something in his tone makes Adana's confident smile falter slightly. He slides a thick manila folder across the polished table surface, its contents representing the legal foundation of their entire lifestyle. "Perhaps you should refresh your memory about actual ownership." Her manicured fingers, still adorned with rings he bought her, tremble slightly as she opens the folder to find documents that will rewrite her understanding of reality. The original purchase agreements stare back at her like accusatory witnesses, every page bearing the same name in bold legal print: Emeka Chukwemeka Okoro, sole owner and proprietor. Bank statements showing mortgage payments stretching back 7 years, all from his personal accounts. Building permits, construction contracts, insurance policies. A paper trail of ownership that makes her management role look like what it actually is: a privilege granted by a generous husband to a woman he thought he could trust. "Everything you think you own." Emeka's voice cuts through her shock like a surgeon's scalpel. "Including this house we're sitting in, every stick of furniture, every piece of jewelry on your body. It all belongs to me. I put your name on management contracts because I loved you, but the deeds tell a different story." Adana's world tilts on its axis as the magnitude of her delusion becomes clear, her face draining of color until she looks like a ghost haunting her own life. The power she's wielded so cruelly, the authority she's used to destroy families, the empire she thought made her untouchable, all of it has been borrowed from the man sitting across from her, watching her world crumble with the cold satisfaction of justice finally being served. "Even this apartment?" Her voice emerges as barely a whisper, the words scraping her throat raw. "Especially this apartment," Emeka confirms, his tone carrying the finality of a judge delivering a death sentence. "And tomorrow morning, you'll discover exactly how it feels to be at the mercy of a heartless landlord." The silence that follows is deafening, broken only by the soft tick of their grandfather clock, another possession that belongs entirely to him, counting down the final moments of her reign as the neighborhood's most feared tyrant. Adana stares at the documents as if willing them to change, but legal reality is immutable as gravity. Every family she's evicted, every pregnant woman she's thrown onto the streets, every elderly person she's shown no mercy, all of it happened on property that was never hers to control. The irony is so perfect it feels orchestrated by cosmic forces with a sense of humor darker than the bottom of the ocean, but the consequences will be brutally, undeniably real. Emeka watches his wife's face cycle through denial, anger, bargaining, and finally the dawning horror of understanding as she realizes that her position of power was always an illusion, a gift that can be revoked as easily as it was granted. The woman who showed no mercy to others now faces the prospect of receiving the same treatment she's dealt out with such casual cruelty. Her expensive jewelry suddenly feels heavy as chains, Her designer clothes like costume pieces in a play where she's forgotten her lines and the audience is about to witness her complete humiliation. The transformation is already beginning. From predator to prey in the space of a single conversation, from feared landlady to potential homeless woman with nowhere to run and no one to blame but herself for the bridges she's burned with her cruelty. Tomorrow will bring revelations that make tonight's shock seem gentle by comparison, but for now she sits in stunned silence, finally understanding that all the gold in the world can't protect you when you've built your throne on a foundation of other people's suffering and your husband's generosity. And so, viewers, the story pauses here, on the edge of a reckoning that no amount of gold jewelry or false power can stop. But before we close this chapter, let's draw out 3 powerful lessons. Firstly, no matter how high you rise, cruelty to the vulnerable will always call down judgment. Sooner or later, power without compassion becomes a trap. Secondly, what you think is secure may not truly belong to you. Pride and arrogance blind us to the fact that everything we have can be taken in a moment. Thirdly, the cries of the oppressed are never wasted. Whether through fate, karma, or divine justice, every tear shed will one day demand an answer. Now, let me ask you. Firstly, if you were Emeka, would you protect your empire or expose your wife? Secondly, if you were Sarah, would you forgive those who wronged you once justice comes? Thirdly, if you were a neighbor in that compound, would you have spoken up or stayed silent in fear? If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the shocking continuation. Part 2 is coming, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when justice finally knocks on Adana's door.